Christina, would you read the Open Public Meetings Act statement, please?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Pinelands Commission was given in compliance with the requirements.
That's the special reverb effect.
Didn't know I was ventriloquist, did you? Okay, with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act by providing notice to all municipal and county clerks within the Pinelands area and to the Secretary of State on December 21st, 2018, and to the Commission's officially designated newspapers on December 20th, 2018, and by posting a copy on the Commission's website.
Thank you, Deputy Attorney General. Would the Executive Director please call the roll call?
Sure. Good morning.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ashman? No, not yet. Commissioner Avery? Commissioner Christie? Commissioner Erlin?
Here.
Commissioner Howell?
Here.
Commissioner Irick?
Here.
Commissioner Janarone? Commissioner Lloyd?
Here.
Commissioner Lovauer?
Here.
Commissioner Pikaliski?
Here.
Commissioner Quinn?
Here.
Commissioner Rowan Green? Chairman Pritt.
Here. You good? All right. Please, everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have two sets of minutes today. The first is the open session minutes for September 13th, 2019. Do I have a motion to adopt those minutes?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions, concerns about the open session minutes for September 13th, 2019? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Oh.
You can't, you have to read the minutes.
Oh, you read it, yeah.
Then you can vote.
Okay, then withdraw that.
Okay, the second set of minutes, closed session minutes from September 13th, 2019. And we did not have a quorum at the last meeting to approve these. So do we have that quorum today? Not right now. So we're going to have to put that off either later in the meeting or for the November meeting already. Okay. All right. Committee chairs and executive director reports. I think I'm up first. And I'm going to read the summary of the Policy and Implementation Committee meeting for September 27th, 2019. The committee adopted the minutes of the August 23rd, 2019 meeting. The committee received an update on Section 502 funding. The committee recommended the commission approve the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's request to convey state-owned lands acquired with 502 funds to Ocean County to expand the county's holdings in the vicinity of the historic Cedar Bridge Tavern. The committee received an update by New Jersey DEP representatives on continuing efforts to protect public lands within the Pinelands area from off-road motorized vehicle damage. I'd like to suggest that if you'd like more information, it's on the web. You might check the September 2019 monthly management report where this is a little more detail. So it's a great document to refer to. And also the minutes will come out a little later in the month, I think, to give you even more information. So that's it, I think, for the chair reports.
We're having quorum crisis. So here's the situation. Because on the agenda is the DEP Ocean County land swap, a lot of people sitting over there on that.
Right.
So who do we lose for that? Gary. Now, it's an Ocean County issue, so Gary can't vote, so we need Candy. Candy's on the phone now, but then she has to go. So if we do the land swap now, we can take care of
Okay.
it. And all these
So
people will be here for no
we could jump ahead with the
Yeah, that's okay.
consent of the,
Sorry, we're having-
consent of the commission. Everybody all right with that? Okay. All right, so that document is at the back of the packet. It's always good to shake things up.
Good, how's that?
Yeah,
shaking a lot today.
Do that.
I see smiles on the public's faces, so they're enjoying it as well. Okay.
Yes, if you're refusing.
Don't go too far.
See you.
Candy, are you here? Okay. So this resolution is to concur with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's conveyance of state-owned lands in Barnegat Township acquired with Section 502 funding to Ocean County. So is there a
I'll
motion?
move it, Chairman.
And who seconded it? Ed. Okay.
And before the commission proceeds, I just wanted to note that Commissioner Quinn stepped out of the room. He's recusing himself because this is an Ocean County matter and he is with Ocean
He's the Ocean
County.
County freeholder.
Okay, thank you.
Justice Candy, not yet.
You guys can have a discussion.
Okay, we'll discuss.
Chairman, if I may, I do have a question. It was certain, I know we had a thorough discussion of this at P&I. I neglected to ask then, and I'm just curious now, whether there was a public hearing process by the DEP that was associated with this application.
So we do have our friends from DEP. Judith Yaney is here, and probably best to let her describe the process that DEP had to go through.
Thank you.
Good morning, Judith. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Judith Yaney. I am Chief of Legal Services and Stewardship for the Green Acres Program. DEP is required if we want to convey any property in an amount greater than an acre to have public hearings, and it's usually 2 if it's over 5 acres. So the first hearing is held in the municipality in which the property is located, and the second hearing is held in Trenton. So we had 2 public hearings. And they were widely advertised because our statute requires us to send out a variety of notices.
Okay. Great, thank you. I just want to be sure.
You're welcome.
It was covered.
Good morning, Candy. It's Jessica. Can you hear me?
I'm here,
Okay.
yes.
Good morning, Candy. All right, so are there any questions or comments? Would anyone from Ocean County like to come up and say anything regarding this application? Mark, right?
Yeah, good morning. I'm Mark Fillinger with the Ocean County Planning Department. We participated with DEP. We actually held our own public hearings because part of this is an actual exchange of land. The land in green, it's hard to see on the map here, but in Barnegat Township surrounds a 5-acre parcel, which is owned by Ocean County, which is where the Cedar Bridge Tavern is. So the green surrounding Cedar Bridge Tavern is owned by the state. The orange properties, which is about 270 acres, is owned by the county, surrounded by Bass River. So this is just a pure exchange of lands. The state will get 270 acres. The county will get about 200 acres to support the Cedar Bridge Tavern.
Mark, I understand you brought with you a.
Sure, if
agency
in
of-
case the committee had any questions regarding Cedar Bridge Tavern specifically, we do have our county historian and Joseph Prozik from Parks to talk about that if you had any specific questions regarding that.
Maybe they could do just a summary of the history of the latest history over the last maybe 5 years.
Tim Hart,
I'm Tim Hart, Ocean County historian. So this is a very historic site. In 1830, as an example, there were 2 taverns. There was the Holman Tavern and the Wildermuth or Cedar Bridge Tavern. We think Europeans started occupying the site around 1740. That tavern is no longer exists, but through archaeological studies with Monmouth University, they've conducted 3 field schools in 10, 14, and in this last summer. We found the earth-fast remains of that tavern. This tavern is probably around 1800. This was a main thoroughfare, east and west. They've also found fire-cracked rock, which indicates that Native Americans were here probably somewhere in the 1000 time frame. And so it was a very productive site. Napoleon's brother Joseph probably visited the site. Lots of naturalists have visited and have recorded that. And we believe that it's the site of the last documented land engagement of the American Revolution. So it has a lot of, it's a very good opportunity to, a teaching moment for students and the public. So we're very proud of it.
Thank you so much, and I know you provided me with this purpose.
Yeah, I can leave those for everyone else, yes.
Okay.
And it's open 6 days a week, except for Wednesday, from now till the end of the year, so.
Thank you so much. All right, so the resolution has been moved forward by Mark and seconded by Ed. Candy, can you hear us?
Yes, just barely.
Okay, so do you have any questions?
I've read all the material.
Excellent, excellent. Any questions from any other commissioners, comments?
No, no comment.
All right, so all in favor, would you say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have one recusal. Okay, unanimously passed.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I'm just very impressed with, I remember when this plan came before the commission not too long ago regarding the Cedar Bridge Tavern and how quickly it was restored and open to the public. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
do
Commissioner.
you need my vote for anything else?
No,
Yes or no?
no, Candy. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, Candy. Okay, so we're now to Executive Director reports. Nancy?
Your report.
Yes.
I was trying to get Candy on the phone, I'm sorry. Okay, good morning. Stacy is at an oral argument on what we call the Winsinger matter, which was a mining application that's been ongoing forever, and we all felt it was a good idea for Stacy to be there just to keep an eye on, no offense, the Attorney General's office and the lawyer for the other side, so she may or may not be arriving, but that's where she is. Over the past month, Chuck may mention a little bit, but there were 2 meetings dealing with issues concerning blueberry farmers in Hamilton and Mullica? I might have made that part up. Mullica, good. One has to do with the Department of Community Affairs and the fire suppression and other amenities in the housing, and the other had to do with septic systems. Chuck may talk about his meeting. I went to a second meeting, which was with a number, about 8 or 9 blueberry farmers, DEP, and the Department of Agriculture. Everybody's working together to try to get everybody compliant with all the rules for septic, so that they'll be in place for the next growing season. So that's a sort of cooperative effort that's moving forward. Susan and I met with Sustainable Jersey. We had mentioned that we were going to do that. We met with the executive director and another manager from there to sort of talk about what they're doing, what we're doing, and whether or not we could line up in any way. We haven't really regrouped on it yet. They're doing a lot of things with municipalities and schools. We have, how many towns of ours are in? Less than 20 Pinelands towns are currently in. So there's opportunity there. It's just a matter of figuring out how to make it work so it benefits us and benefits them and will help us with the climate initiatives. The other thing, I had sent to Chairman Prickett, I think 4 speakers that I'd sort of narrowed down the field to for that climate committee. I was supposed to send them out to the rest of the committee. I didn't. Commissioner Lloyd has been helping me with one that I think will be an excellent speaker who conveniently is at Columbia, so he knows him. And then there were a few others. I'm going to send those out. What's going to happen now is, so we have good speakers. I think we're going to have to come up with dates, meeting dates. So, it's like the cart and the horse. Do I lock the speaker in before I lock you in? And because we've been traumatized by quorum lately, I'm anxious about it. So I will send that list out either this afternoon or Tuesday, because we're not open on Monday. And then we're going to start to think about date. But I think that the speakers will be good and it will set us on a path. And we're continuing to do other work as we have discussed. So hopefully within the next month, we'll have a meeting with the speaker and further updates on what we've been doing. And then the other thing I have is, as always, super good news. So Commission has hired Carol Eversberger. Carol is sitting next to Jessica Lynch in the front. Carol works in the Business Services Office. She is providing unbelievably crucial assistance we need in that office, particularly with regard to another set of eyes on things. We're such a small place that in our financial doings, it's very difficult for us to keep separate approvals and to make sure that there's not one person who's looking at things twice. And Carol is providing that, plus a wealth of expertise that is really good. If I didn't mention, she came from Burlington County. That's where she was working. She's been here a little while now. Jessica Lynch is enormously happier, which is good. Her stress level is less, so that's excellent. So Carol will be very helpful to us. We have a lot of big procurement things coming up, painting the building. So with this extra expertise in-house, that will be really helpful. So as always, we get a little personal information. So Carol lives in the Pinelands. She likes to spend time with family and friends, enjoys spending time outside, hiking and at the beach, enjoys reading and doing puzzles. And I did not make this up. Her motto is, every day is a good day.
Wow.
That is the best. And when I met Carol after she had been interviewed up and we had made our decision, I could see that would be her motto. I met with her for like 5 minutes. I walked out and said, we have to hire her. She was just happy and delightful, and she has continued to be so. You might encounter her on the phones or as a receptionist. She fills in. So we're super happy. So welcome.
Nancy, you mentioned Stacy, and if Stacy was here, she would mention that the ethics module is due November 11th. I know it's not November yet, but the module, no, I'm trained. We're all trained with the ethics, and also with the financial disclosure, which is May 15th. So,
yes, ethics. It's time again for ethics.
and I imagine it's the module that is online, and if the public would like to take a look at what we review every year, sometimes we have one live presentation of the ethics module. That was a number of years ago. But I would invite the public to take a look. At the moment, Ethics Commission, I think that is where the link is. You might want to take a look at what we review on a yearly basis. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Any commissioners have any questions for the executive director?
Nancy, thanks for tracking down some speakers, and we'll continue to help you with Mike Gerard. I wondered if we couldn't, have the speakers come in for a commissioner meeting, and I recognize that sometimes our agendas are full. I guess the other way to do it, especially because we've got quorum problems here, I mean, I'm sure we would invite all the commissioners to the session, but if we could try to do it at a time that could accommodate everybody, that would be great. And then the other thing, if we can stream it, I think would be helpful so that so commissioners who can't come would see it and the public would see it.
I have no problem having them at commission meetings when the agenda allows it, or at P&I, which was mostly that committee. I just didn't want to leave the committee with nothing to do.
I don't think that's a problem, but I hear you. Thank you, though.
So we'll be flexible.
That sounds good to me. Okay. Any other questions for executive director? Okay, I have a few questions. One, Ms. Jenny. Ms. Jenny, has her position been filled yet? Are we working on doing that? And what I'm thinking of is, I was at White Spot, I think it was last weekend, for one of the reenactments. And some of my botany friends came up to see me, and one in particular was very enthusiastic about the roadside habitat on the road to Chatsworth. And he expressed that, what we've been doing here has had a great impact on the growth of teeny species and wonderful Pinelands plants. So I just wanted to bring that up and say kudos to the effort staff and the commission make in keeping those habitats alive. I know it's a work in progress, so do you have staff check on that? I mean, are we continuing that program?
I couldn't answer that.
You got the hot potato.
So a number of questions. One, we have not yet replaced Robin. I should say Robin's irreplaceable, but we have not yet figured out exactly the types of skills and
Sure.
responsibilities, because Robin was doing a very wide and interesting variety of projects, and so the chances of finding someone who could do all of that again, I think, are slim. So we're sort of trying to figure all that out and maybe transferring some of her responsibilities to existing staff and thinking a little bit about exactly who we need to hire. So we haven't yet proceeded with that. So that's the first part. The roadside plants we are still working on that, and there are still Robin's team of volunteers who are out there reporting in on what they find. And she had a whole group of people from various nonprofits and from DEP who are in the field a lot, who submit reports back to us. And so that part of the program is still happening. And we are still in contact with the various counties. Just that part of things Robin was doing was mainly a reminder to the counties of, the time of year and if they had any questions about the activities that were supposed to be happening or not happening. So yes, we're not out there with the same level of effort that we had when Robin was here, but we're still monitoring, and we are still processing the data and mapping and making sure we stay up on all of that. So
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
And I imagine we have a number of volunteers that aren't as vocal as I think they should be out there looking at the roadside habitat. And I encourage this person to write a letter or come speak at the commission, because we got to keep it alive, and we got to keep people aware of the importance of the roadside habitat. And by the way, for the public and commissioner's sake, we have a brochure that's available in the lobby, roadside habitat in New Jersey Pinelands. And there's also a section on the website about this. So it seems to me it's a very successful program. I have another question, and that has to do with the Hamilton application from a number of months ago. They were working on changing where they were releasing water from their treated MUA plant. And I was wondering what the progress is on that application. And I can wait till get to Chuck, maybe he wants to answer at that point. Okay, we've given him notice at this point.
Got a heads up.
All right, thank you. Susan, did you have anything you wanted to say today?
Maybe just one or two things. One, I've attended 2 meetings now of the governor's newly or reconvened interagency task force. I think I've mentioned it a couple times in the monthly reports, but I went to another meeting in September. Initially, it seemed that the task force meetings were really focused on the State Planning Commission's work and plan endorsement process, which we've talked about here before, designation of largely coastal centers, which are expiring. The first meeting was focused on that. Second meeting was a little broader. That was still mentioned. It's clear that the State Planning Commission is really geared up and working with a lot of municipalities on their centers and the plan endorsement process, some of which we've been involved with on the edges. Where it's not the Pinelands area itself that they're looking at, but it's in the Pinelands National Reserve. So we're involved with that. The other focus of the meeting, though, was really on how all the different state agencies and departments are contributing or can contribute to the governor's economic initiatives, mostly related to municipalities, job growth. He has a series of them. And so it was really an initial meeting to find out what we're already doing that support those initiatives and what we plan to do in the future, and how all of the agencies and departments can perhaps better coordinate so that we're not duplicating effort, so that municipalities or businesses or whoever it is can have, it'll be clearer to them who they need to speak to. Perhaps we'll have joint meetings in an effort to accomplish some of the governor's objectives. So that was really the focus of the September meeting. I just had an email this morning. They're going to be meeting again at the end of this month. So it does seem to be an increased level of effort and interest on the part of the governor's office in convening all of the Highlands councils there. Of course, we're there. All of the different departments are there. Multiple people from it's an interesting group. A lot of people we've worked with for years, but it's nice to all be in the same room together and listening to what everyone else is doing. So that seems like that's going to be an ongoing effort. So I'll report back.
How many people attend that meeting?
Oh, there were probably 20, 25 people, plus people from the governor's office. So it was a full, we were bursting at the seams of the meeting room. It was full. So.
Seems like there's an opportunity for everybody to talk.
And most
do
of
their
us have known each
presentation.
other for a long time. So, it's a good group.
Thank you, Susan. Any questions, commissioners, for Ed?
Yeah, Susan, this task force sounds like a great opportunity to discuss the climate change issues that we're working on, and I think that the state is interested in as well, and especially with plan endorsement. I mean, if towns are moving ahead to plan endorsement, this is I think we're going to be working with our towns, I suspect. Maybe we can coordinate with the rest of the state and
Right. So
come up
that
with
did
a uniform plan.
that did come up at the last meeting because, of course, there are DEP people, staff in the room, and they talked a little bit about their interest in largely coastal resiliency and their focus on the plan endorsement process this go round was in looking again at the boundaries of all of those coastal centers that are expiring and perhaps pulling back on some of the areas with an eye towards areas that are flood prone. They're really looking at trying to shrink centers or relocate future development because of climate change and the resiliency effort they have. So it's clear that that's going to be the focus of plan endorsement this time around. The meeting I went to in Stafford on plan endorsement for their National Reserve area, that was made very clear by the DEP people in the room. That was their focus. So yes, that's definitely going to be raised over and over again. And they mentioned some of the other efforts unrelated to plan endorsement that they're working on. So I think that'll be a big focus.
That sounds great. I would just maybe see if we can move them to address climate change issues in inland towns, because the coast has its own set of issues, but I think there are contributions that other municipalities could make to climate change. That would be
Right. So,
extremely
and
helpful.
one of the concerns I had and was shared by a couple of the other people in the room too during the meeting was while generally the meetings are about how to support the governor's economic initiatives, there is a real focus on plan endorsement, which by and large does not affect the Pinelands area. And so a lot of the meeting was talking about how can the towns going through plan endorsement get better coordination, access to grants. And our towns are sort of not part of that discussion. And so that was raised during the meeting. What about the municipalities that don't have to go through plan endorsement? So that'll be something I think we'll have to talk about at future meetings. And that kind of ties into what you're saying, which is the inland communities, which ours largely are. What about them? What's the focus there? So that's still to be worked on.
Are Highlands municipalities in the same boat that our municipalities are? Are they outside the plan
Yeah,
as
I don't
well?
remember exactly how that works. It's a little bit, their relationship's a little bit different with the State Planning Commission, but they had some of the same concerns that we did about, we already have a plan. Our towns are either certified or not, but focus is a little bit different. So there's a whole lot going on at these meetings, as you can imagine, with so many people in the room and all of the agencies with different programs and perspectives. So it's going to take us a while, I think, to narrow down and focus and figure out who really needs to be there and what the issues are. But we got started, so that's good.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Susan? Thank you, Susan. Larry, good morning.
Good morning.
You have a lot of good news for us.
No bad news, put it that way. Continuing to work with DEP on the Pinelands Infrastructure Trust Fund projects. There's a lot of details, many more than we thought, but they have a whole series of staff, each one on a particular thing. So they're moving ahead with getting all their projects and our projects before the State Assembly and the Senate to get endorsement from those. Our governor's review period was up last week, I guess it was, something like that. And so our projects are now past that hurdle. And so we'll be sending out notices to those that did receive awards from you, and also to the people who didn't. So that's another aspect of our future work, as we mentioned, can we get more money? Can we expand to the towns? Those are always in the back of our mind, can we do those two expansions? But the first thing to do is get the money into the projects we have. We still don't have a total solution for the water projects because of that regulatory thing that DEP needs to pass. It's going to take a while to get it done, and we're continuing to pressure them to look for solutions, short-term solutions, rather than waiting for new regulations to come out, which can be time-consuming and cumbersome. So, but they've been very much in communication with Gina, and they're looking at all kinds of things. Like they're looking at a loan program. Remember, our program is 90% funding, loan and grant, the last 10%. Well, they're looking at making funds available for the 10% interim funds, even though that's a local share. If they make that available, the projects can actually go ahead a little bit faster. So there's a lot going on in terms of getting those projects up and going early in the new calendar year. The only other thing I wanted to mention is we're also doing some work with the Cape May landfill. They've come in and they're changing their management plan a little bit. They were going to do something that used to be innovative, and that was mining landfills. They would go back in and mine the garbage and take out the recyclables. And by doing so, they would reduce the volume of waste so you could put more waste in. The unfortunate thing has happened is the recyclable market has collapsed. I'm sure you're all aware of that. So they're not going to do that because it just doesn't make sense. Also, they're a little bit worried about odor problems. When you open old landfills, they do have some issues there. So if they're not going to do that, they're just going to cap it with a new impervious cap and build above it. And so we're looking at all the provisions under the CMP for their expansions and making sure everybody's aware of them. The landfill is scheduled to be completely filled, if you like, in 2034. I have a stinging suspicion that isn't going to occur. Their volumes are coming in smaller. So we might have some issues in 2034. So look forward to that. Not with me, though.
We had this meeting yesterday, and we all did the math in our head and said.
Anyway, so we want to make sure that they remember that, yes, indeed, in 2034, there may have to be some changes, renewals, things like that. So we're working with them on that. That's all I had.
Very good. Thank you, Larry. Any questions for Larry? Okay. Again, thank you, Larry. Chuck, next. I saved you for the end just so you can get your thoughts together on my request.
Certainly, I appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. Just a few items that I wanted to mention of note. The commission received an application for the demolition of a single-family dwelling in Southampton Township. The dwelling dates from 1785. The way the commission's regulations and the township's ordinance are written, the township is going to have to issue something called a certificate of appropriateness, which determines the, quote, appropriate treatment of that significant historic resource. We've been working with Southampton Township officials to review the different requirements of a certificate of appropriateness and how that process unfolds. The certificate of appropriateness, our regulations indicate that when something is determined to be a significant historic resource, the first step is the applicant has to determine whether preservation in place is feasible. And there's a whole series of tests that have to be addressed for preservation in place. If preservation in place is not feasible, the next requirement is preservation at another location with a whole series of tests and evaluation criteria. And lastly, if neither of those, what are referred to as treatments, are feasible, then the historic structure has to be recorded. Recorded means photographs, a written report, on the background and history of the structure. So that application now is in Southampton Township. It's now Southampton Township's opportunity to review the application and make a determination. Just like any other permit or approval in the Pinelands area, whatever determination is reached, that is actually constitutes a permit or an approval. That'll come back to the Pinelands Commission staff for a determination of whether it's consistent with our rules. So we're looking forward to that process with the township. The next item I just wanted to mention to follow up on the executive director's comments on the meetings with the agricultural community, the Department of Environmental Protection, and the State Department of Agriculture. In mid-September, I attended a meeting to discuss some of the violation notices that were issued by the Department of Environmental Protection for certain agricultural uses, primarily in Atlantic County for failing septic systems and other related issues. The purpose of the commission staff attending that meeting was really to provide an overview of our rules as how they relate to the issues that are being raised by the DEP violation notices. Under the commission's regulations, these are referred to as, the dwellings are referred to as seasonal agricultural employee housing. And that euphemism, what it really means by definition under our regulation is they're not permanent housekeeping units, that they're in fact seasonal agricultural employee housing. They are permitted in all areas of the Pinelands. We don't have a prohibition on them. That's the permitted use issue. The next step is under your rules, they have to meet the environmental standards of the Pinelands plan. For example, you could not construct an agricultural employee house in wetlands. So the message that I tried to provide was that they are permitted uses under our rules. As long as they're cited appropriately, they will meet our environmental standards. And interestingly enough, the way your rules are set up is they do not meet the environmental standards for some reason. The rules actually provide for a waiver of strict compliance that could be provided for seasonal agricultural employee housing. I think everyone was pleased to know that the commission's rules are actually set up to allow seasonal agricultural employee housing. And then a follow-up meeting was scheduled, and that's the meeting that Nancy attended in Hamilton. The next issue I wanted to mention, I think I brought up at the prior commission meeting, there's a very large residential development application moving through the Jackson Township Planning Board. There was another meeting of the planning board this past Monday. Each time the planning board has its meeting, we receive many inquiries and phone calls about different issues that are being raised with that application. We note to the callers and people that are inquiring and submitting information to us, we encourage them to participate at the planning board level. That's how the commission's rules are set up. If and when Jackson Township makes a determination on this application, if it issues an approval, that approval comes back to the commission staff for review to determine whether it's consistent with our regulations. As part of that review, the staff will consider the information that is generated from the local public hearings. And we continue to counsel people that that's the process that the commission staff is following. The last two items I wanted to mention, some of you may have been reading, there's a proposed demolition of a restaurant in New Gretna. It's on Route 9, and I don't remember the county route number, but it's a former restaurant site. There's been some articles in the newspaper that one of the walls has to be left up to meet the commission's standards. We've been working with the applicant. The demolition and reconstruction of that restaurant will be consistent with the commission's rules. They do not have to leave a wall up. So this is a restaurant that pre-existed the Pinelands. It would be a continuation of an existing use, and we've advised the applicants accordingly. And the last item that I just wanted to mention was in response to the chairman's question about Hamilton's application. I knew they had filed their application. I knew that we had issued a letter for the information that was necessary to complete that application. Ernie Demon of your staff just handed me a letter from Hamilton dated September 27th, where they've provided that information back to us in an effort to complete their application. For everyone's benefit who may not recall the details, this was the executive director in consultation with the chairman made a determination under the emergency provision in your regulations for removal of a discharge that had been located on property that did not belong to Hamilton. Hamilton wanted to relocate that discharge immediately. That authorization was issued with the condition that an application be filed and completed with the Pinelands Commission. If there's any questions on that one, I'll be glad to elaborate more.
Thank you, Mr. Horner. It sounds like it's working its way through.
Yes, we believe so.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Horner? Ed?
Chuck, with respect to the demolition of the historic home, do we know what they're proposing at this point? Are they proposing Plan A, Plan B, or Plan C?
Well, the applicant is proposing demolition. And the way that our rules are written now, we've issued a certificate of filing. The application was completed, but now it's back to the township to make a determination on what is the appropriate treatment for that resource. And I think that the township is just formulating its approach.
It may be premature, but do we have any idea how much it would cost to rehabilitate?
No, but that is part of the determination under the certificate of appropriateness. One of the criteria is you have to evaluate the cost of rehabilitating the home.
And then with respect to the demolition of in New Gretna, I think I understand our rules, and I suspect, but it could be wrong, that the one wall issue is a requirement that if there's not one wall left, they have to meet all new standards. I believe that's where that comes from. Maybe the municipal land use law. Christina, I don't know whether you're familiar with that or not. But
We also believe it's a New Jersey Uniform Construction Code issue. We've encountered this in prior circumstances where people have inadvertently demolished their entire structure and then had to meet all current construction codes.
that's my understanding. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? Chuck, thanks again.
You're welcome.
All right. Now for considerations where the record is closed, we have a resolution that includes 3 applications. The first in Jackson Township for the installation of a 13.7 acre ground mounted solar energy facility on the Jackson Township Legler landfill. Another application in Lacey Township, construction of a gasoline fueling station and a 3,899 square foot convenience store at the Forked River service area within the Garden State Parkway right-of-way. And finally, the town of Hamilton, the demolition of a building 50 years or older, and Mr. Horner provided us with a picture of what looks like possibly it was a gasoline station at one time. Is there a motion to move this forward?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Is there a second?
Second.
Mark, thanks. Now for any questions or concerns?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Matt, I thought it might be helpful just to spend a moment on the solar facility,
Yes.
since it's been a long, arduous application by both, I'm sure, from the perspective of the applicant and our staff. We actually have a slide up on the smart board that depicts what's being proposed. Can everyone see that all right, or should we turn the lights on?
That's a little better.
This is the site of a former landfill. It's known as the Legler landfill, owned by Jackson Township. It was capped with a soil cap. It was closed prior to the Pinelands Commission. And the current proposal is to locate a 13.7 acre solar facility on what is the cap of the landfill. On the slide, the gray represents the 13.7 acres that would be the solar facility. In review of the application, a threatened and endangered plant was identified on the parcel, sickle leaf golden aster. After a survey was conducted, there's a very significant population exceeding 50,000 plants that are out on the open, barren area of this landfill. The open sandy soil is the appropriate habitat for this plant, and it's thriving. Through any number of iterations of this plan, the solar array itself was reduced in size and relocated. It's hard to see on the slide, but there are actually 2 landfill caps. To the south is a second landfill cap where the solar was originally proposed. There's a significant population of the plant on that cap. The applicant revised the proposal to eliminate that solar array. As part of the application and to demonstrate consistency with the threatened and endangered species standard, the applicant proposed to deed restrict, that's the green crossed hatched area on the slide, areas where the remaining populations are present. That deed restriction will prohibit disturbance of that area. And that's just an overall summation. I thought it might be relatively interesting to provide that to the commission. I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are some.
It really helps visualize, the text of the report. Any questions for Chuck on this or any other matter? One brief one, Chuck. Do we know where the connection is to the grid for the solar field?
Yes, we do. There will be a utility line that will be located. There's an existing JCP&L easement on the existing mining operation across I guess that's to the west. On the western half of that parcel, there's an existing pole line. And so the township will be dropping a pole line from the solar field down and interconnected right on that parcel that's adjacent to the proposed solar facility.
Any other questions? Okay, I would just like to point out that the recommendation for this application regarding vegetation of disturbed areas is not proposed or recommended because of potential negative impact on the sickle-leaf golden asters from competing grass species. I'm hoping that when the solar panels go in, that perhaps that might provide habitat for the sickle-leaf golden aster. I don't know whether that's been thought about or whether that's possible, but is there any consideration for that possibility? Perhaps by not planting the grasses, that is a consideration. But
So the solar array is being located over an existing barren area. So perhaps if you could clarify.
so if it's not there already, maybe the plant habitat or there isn't really plant habitat. That's a possibility.
Yes, although I think all of it is plant habitat right now and should continue to be plant habitat until it succeeds at some later date.
So it's possible the population of the sickle leaf hasn't moved into that area yet. It's just out of time. Okay. Sorry to make that confusing.
That's okay. But I just want to clarify that the plant is there. The plant is located right now across the landfill. And once the solar facility is constructed, there will be an elimination of some of the plants.
Yeah, and perhaps I'm a bit naive about it, but I'd just like to hope that maybe that would provide some more habitat underneath the solar
Understand.
panel. Okay, any questions on this resolution? 2 other applications? No? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Put mine with aye in there. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, the next resolution is for 2 applications in Atlantic County. The first is, and they're both in rural development and regional growth areas. The first is for road improvements within the Jimmy Lee's right-of-way. And the second is improvements to the intersection of Pomona Road and Vera King Ferris Drive. Sure. Thank you, Mark. So, who's the second? Gary? Jerry? Any questions or concerns? I know there's an article in the clips that we received. Okay. Seeing that there's no questions, we're comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Okay. Do we have time to have the public comments on the, where the record is not closed? Or should we go into closed? Well, we have, where the record is not closed, we have 4 applications. One from Hamilton Township Board of Education. It's construction of a playground and associated improvements at the William Davis Middle School. We have New Jersey Department of Transportation, construction of a stormwater basin at US Route 322 and Cologne Avenue. We have a Medford application, construction of a 23,000 plus square foot municipal building. And finally, the town of Hamilton did a demolition of a single family dwelling 50 years or older. So, can I see a show of hands from the public if you would like to talk about any of these applications? If you have public comment. Okay, so I'm going to open up. I'm going to open up the meeting for public comment on these applications. Would anyone like to come up and speak? Sorry, I rigged this, but okay. Meeting is closed to public comment on where the record is not closed. All right, so the reason I did that is because we need to go into closed session before we continue with the agenda. Change of plan. We're going to continue with the agenda. And so now I'd just like to say that Beechwood Borough Planning Board Resolution 2019-30 was submitted to the commission, and the executive director found no substantial issue finding regarding that. We did complete the resolution at the beginning of the meeting on the Section 502 funding to Ocean County. And so now we have an annual update on permanent land protection in the Pinelands area presentation. Public, thank you for your indulgence in our changes up here. Much appreciated.
Okay, so every year we bring you the happy news of land protection efforts in the Pinelands area for the past fiscal year. So this is for fiscal year 19. We have a large map which may make its way into the meeting room at some point. So you can take a look at that after the meeting if you'd like. Okay, there it is. Shiny and beautiful. Okay, so here's our summary of newly preserved land in the Pinelands area for the past fiscal year. This, as you'll see from the chart, covers all different sources of land acquisition and funding, and we've separated them out a little bit. So the first one, Pinelands programs, these are lands that were protected as a result of one of the commission's either acquisition programs or environmental standards in our review of applications, as you just heard, in terms of, for example, the Legler landfill and the solar facility in Jackson will ultimately be deed restricting a good portion of that property. So that's the type of thing we would then report under this Pinelands programs category. So in the last year, Altogether, Pinelands programs have preserved 1,877 acres in the Pinelands area, which is a nice number. Green Acres has also been active in the Pinelands area during the past year. They have preserved another 460 acres, and I have some details on all of this later. So most of that acreage is in the Preservation Area District and the Forest Area. County farmland preservation programs continue to be active, particularly Burlington County. So one of the farms, there were two farms in this past fiscal year that were preserved. One is a relatively small farm in Southampton Township, about 30-some acres. The larger farm is in Franklin Township in Gloucester County, about 120-some acres. So those were the two this year, none by the state. So these are both county farmland preservation programs. You'll see that rather large total under county open space. It's a shame Commissioner Avery is not here. That is all Ocean County due to their efforts, and our Ocean County friends also left. So, oh well. So anyway,
We have an Ocean County freeholder.
yeah, so I'll show you a map in a little while so you can see that, but that's a rather staggering number. We don't usually see increases of quite that size, so they've been very busy. Municipal open space, 2 acres this year, and nonprofit acquisitions. We also do try to keep track of what the various nonprofit conservation organizations are doing in the Pinelands area. This past year, there were 33 acres preserved. That was by the Nature Conservancy down in Morris River Township. So the grand total for the past year is about 9,200 acres of land, which is a really nice increase to the preserved land inventory. So Pinelands programs, again, 1,877 acres. Here's the breakdown for that. You've heard us talking for the whole year, I think, about Pinelands Conservation Fund land acquisition projects. We had 3 that were completed during this past fiscal year. There's a nice picture there of one of them that I think is the Thompson Wright project in Southampton and Woodland Townships. So our last round of acquisition under the PCF has been completed. Garden State Parkway exit 44. I did come and talk to the P&I committee a little bit about that recently, and I'm going to show you a map in a minute. But that has resulted in protection of another 129 acres. All of that's in Galloway Township. Clustering, this is our forest and rural development area clustering program, something else we've talked to the P&I committee about recently. Program's been in operation for just about 10 years. So another 234 acres were preserved during the past fiscal year, and that was 3, I believe that was encompassed in 3 different projects. Density transfer, 5 acres this year. That was just one project or one application. And then you'll see a fairly large number there under T&E, threatened and endangered species. Some of you may recall the discussions we had with the commission and the P&I committee about a property in Woodland Township, a mining property in Woodland Township, where we were able to define an area for future mining, and in return, about 876 acres of sensitive land, wetlands, habitat were permanently deed restricted. So that's largely where that number comes from. And then miscellaneous, we have other categories of deed restrictions that are required due to development applications, and we sort of put them all together. So that's a quick summary of the Pinelands related protected lands for the last year. So a few details, Pinelands, the PCF acquisition program. This is where things stand today, now that all of the rounds have been completed. So really close to 9,000 acres total being preserved. And that's how it looks in terms of the management area colors. You can see the vast majority of preserved lands in the forest area and rural development area where you might expect. And then we have some very smaller areas in the other management areas. Garden State Parkway exit 44, I just wanted to refresh your memory about that. This was an agreement that the commission entered into with Atlantic County in 2013. It was related to the application to improve interchange 44 in Galloway Township, Parkway interchange 44, to turn that from a partial interchange into a full interchange. And the commission approved that development application, and along with it came this obligation for what we call secondary impacts. Because the interchange is in the Parkway Overlay District, there are standards associated with development in that overlay district. And the key one here is that the improvement of an interchange can't result in negative or inconsistent land use impacts, anything that would be inconsistent with the CMP. We don't want that to happen. So the county stepped up and signed the agreement with the commission and agreed to take on the responsibility of either preserving land, or this phrase was used in the agreement, memorializing or freezing the current zoning so there wouldn't be continued pressure to upzone or bring sewer service to certain areas where it's not currently permitted. The obligation was to protect 356 acres within 1.5 miles of the interchange. And they have until the end of this year to do that. So you can see the numbers here. In this past fiscal year, the county was able to close on another 129 acres. So they are now up to a total of just about 326 acres. They've got 30 acres to go. This is what the area looks like, sort of a circle around the interchange, which is
Looks like a yin yang.
right here. It does, doesn't it? The way the parkway curves here. So here's the interchange as it existed back then. You can see it's just a partial interchange. And this is the 1.5 mile area we were looking at. This is the Pinelands area, and this is obviously outside the Pinelands area. And so here is the map that shows you the activities, land acquisition and preservation activities that have occurred over time. The gray, this is Stockton University here. Anything in gray has been permanently preserved by Stockton as a result of the commission's agreement with Stockton University. And then the yellow areas are the areas that Atlantic County has preserved as a result of the Exit 44 secondary impacts agreement. The most recent year's acquisition are largely here. You can see there's a lot of small lots, many of which were owned by Galloway Township. So the county acquired them from the township. They add them to their recreation and open space inventory, and will be, they'll be protected now. So Green Acres for the past year, as I said, it's been active in the Pinelands area, and here's where their acquisitions have occurred. Number of municipalities. Bass River is notable. Here you see 120 acres were acquired. These were all properties that Bass River Township owned and sold to the state. Also notable, some of this acreage is located in one of the old federal Pinelands 502 acquisition areas. We talked about that at the P&I committee, and that was why DEP was here today to do the land swap. So some of this acreage is located in a 502 acquisition area. DEP didn't use 502 acquisition funds because those have not been appropriated, but land acquisition continues within these 502 areas. I just wanted to mention that. So you can see there was a good range of areas and municipalities where DEP was active. And here we have Ocean County. This is actually the county's map, but I think it's a great one. This is this very large green area here. This is their largest acquisition, I think, to date. It's over 6,000 acres in Lacey and Ocean Townships in the forest area and preservation area district. We call this the Brunetti property. That was the owner's name. Something the county, I think Alan has mentioned a couple times, has been working on and attempting to acquire for a long, long time, probably decades. So this really fills in the last remaining large gap in Ocean County. It's in the Forked River Mountains. You can see anything in green is already preserved through either the county or the state or other programs. So it really just fills in this last remaining hole here. Some of you may have seen more recently articles in the newspaper about lands that the Nature Conservancy conveyed to the county. That's this yellow area here. So you can see it's right next to the new Brunetti acquisition. These lands were already preserved, but now they'll be owned and managed by Ocean County. So they just expanded their holdings here. So here's how things look overall. We've been tracking this since, let's say, this chart says 2010. You can see the number of acres preserved in the Pinelands area is steadily rising. We had a really nice increase of just about close to 10,000 acres in this last year, largely due to Ocean County. So we have to say thank you there. And this pie chart just shows you, for the most part, acreage in the Pinelands area is preserved through other government programs, the state largely, counties, a little bit of municipal preservation. So that's the large blue area. This pie here, this little piece of the pie here, this is the Pinelands Commission's piece of the pie. So 92,000 acres have been preserved through a commission program, either acquisition, Pinelands Development Credit Program, limited practical use acquisition program, or as a result of application of your environmental standards to a development application over time. So it's a nice number. And then here's how things look by management area. And really, we do this just to show that for the most part, the protected lands are located in the areas that the commission and the CMP seek to protect. So the preservation area district, it's a total of close to 300,000 acres, or up to 82.5% of the preservation area district is now in some form of permanent land protection. So that's a really great accomplishment. And you can see, forest area is up to 58% now. Special agricultural production area is 60%. And then, as you might expect, in the more development-oriented management areas, the numbers are small in terms of land preservation. But the grand total at the bottom now, of our 938,000 acres in the Pinelands area, 51% are permanently protected. And our total is 477,000 acres, 51%, and 94% of that, 94% of the 477,000 acres are located in our conservation-oriented areas. So that's a real accomplishment and shows the focus. And it's not just the commission, it's DEP and the counties and all of the other players that work in the Pinelands area who are really focusing on these sensitive areas. So that's wonderful. And this this photo here is of the Katz property in Pemberton Township, one of the last Pinelands Conservation Fund projects that was funded. This is the one that the Rancocas Conservancy owns and manages. So I think that's it. Jim.
Could you go back a couple slides? That's the slide.
This one?
My observation I have when I look at this is the applications that we review here at commission meetings basically pertain to the bottom areas, town, village, regional growth.
Yes.
Fewer as you go up.
Correct.
So it puts our work, I think, in perspective, at least from my point of view. I hope that you guys concur, staff concurs with that. But I think that's a good slide to illustrate. We spend a lot of time with development applications in those areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would be interesting to show, we'll figure out a way to do this, to show lands preserved by management area next to where development is occurring by management area. And you could really see, you would see exactly what you're describing. Lands preserved here, development. The vast majority of development is in, as you said, the management areas at the bottom of this chart. And that really is what's happening.
Is there a slide like that? Or
well, we will have to make one. We will make one. We have the data, so we will have to see how we can make that show up on a screen to make it obvious to
again,
everyone.
that kind of reflects the capability map.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
So it all ties together.
Mhm.
It's wonderful. Commissioners, any questions for Susan?
Just to add to what Susan had said, the Forked River Mountain piece and a conservancy piece, between those two parcels in Ocean County, we picked up 11,000 acres. And along with the conservancy piece that was donated, 3,100 acres, there was also $108,000 given to the county to be able to take and manage that property moving forward. And everything that goes on, I just joined the Freeholder Board in January, so that this was all pre-existing before I got on there. But everything that goes on there is really thanks to the taxpayers and the 1.25 cents we collect on open space every year. And we have probably 23 more projects in the pipeline going into contract to continue to buy up more open space. And at this point in time, the county actually owns 30,000 acres of open space throughout Ocean County. So it's a great program, and it's extremely well accepted by the taxpayers down in Ocean County. So,
That's really wonderful to hear. Commissioner Quinn, I wonder if I may ask you a question, or
Sure.
Actually, Freeholder Quinn in this respect. With the Forked River Mountain property, how do you access that? Is there a visitor center there?
Right now, a matter of fact, Mark Billinger, who was here earlier, is in the process of coming up with a plan to present to the Freeholder Board as to what we're going to actually do. There will be visitor centers, there's going to be walking trails. Certain areas of it's going to be open to hunters because we've had a large hunting population all these years down there. Our sheriff's department is currently mapping it out with our drones and trying to get more security in place down there. So once we have it all in place as far as on a map, then we're going to start moving forward. Because the open space question that was put on the ballot years ago allows us to buy property. But we're putting another question on the ballot this coming November to allow us to take and spend some of that money to take and do improvements, not only to the open space, but also to take and do improvements on some of our historical buildings throughout the county. So we're hoping that passes and we have another funding source to be able to continue to take and expand these things.
That's terrific. And I know in a conversation I had with Commissioner Avery, he said that at least some of the original bond issues or questions for the public enabled you to use money to manage
Tremendously,
forest
yeah, yeah.
management.
Mhm.
And so everything I've heard is Ocean County did a great job with
Yeah,
forest
they,
management.
they truly have. And, you know, I mean, there's 5 of us there, but I mean, this all goes back to the early days, you know, Freehold of Bartlett, when John Bartlett started this whole program. And he's since passed on, but he started a great program for the county, so
He was one of the visionaries.
very much so.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mitch.
Any other questions, comments? Ed?
This is a good day. I mean, that's a fantastic report, and it's really exciting to see that happen. And Ocean County, that's a fantastic program. I mean, you are the model. I wish every one of our counties was as good, but I'm delighted that you're doing all the work you're doing. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, you raised money.
Oh, Nancy, would you like to say it? Okay.
We prevailed in our motion to dismiss for failure to exhaust administrative remedies. The CMP is quite clear that there is a process that needs to be followed before the commission, and the court found that they did not have jurisdiction and the applicant had to follow that process. So it is a good day.
Okay, it's now time for general public comment. Ms. Noble, do we have, well, okay, thank you. Ms. Shanley, you're first. Welcome. Hello.
Thank you very much. Good morning, is it? Yes.
It is.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much for having me here, and it's good news. Well done to Ocean County and the Pinelands in general. It would be an awful shame if South Jersey Gas made its way into the Pinelands again after its defeat in 2014, its violation of the Comprehensive Management Plan, and the AG's ruling. Very, very disappointed that it's not on the agenda for voting today, that we can just put it to rest. I'm not sure of what's going on behind the scenes. It's kind of disturbing. And I'm part of Citizens United for Renewable Energy, and at our last meeting, we're coordinating with different groups within New Jersey to try and pressure New Jersey governor to put a moratorium on all fossil fuel infrastructure, new infrastructure in the state of New Jersey. And I hope that the administration of the Pinelands Commission is not working with South Jersey Gas to find ways to go around the Pinelands or through the Pinelands or God only knows what. So I'm hoping that today during your closed session that something will come out of it so that we don't have to keep coming back and keeping an eye on things. Okay, thank you.
Just to refer to number 10, resolution to retire in a closed session. This is a topic that would have been considered in closed session. However, we won't have the quorum needed to really address that at today's meeting. One more on the list here. Margo. Do you have I know what your last name is.
Pellegrino.
I know.
Like the water that's owned by Nestle.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, Margo, welcome. Good to see you.
Yeah, well, good to see you all. I've been absent a lot. But I'm sorry that I came late. It sounded like there was some interesting discussion going on regarding climate change in the Pinelands, and I'm really happy to hear climate change being spoken about in the context of the Pinelands. Today, this morning, I was checking my emails, which I don't usually do in the morning anymore. I try to avoid them. And I happened to catch a news item that there's flooding in Ventnor, and this is the second day in a row that the children down there are going to have delayed openings due to flooding. Then, so that was like one climate change item. Then last week I paddled, I think it was Thursday, on the Mullica. And I didn't bother checking the tide chart when I went out because I figured it is what it is. This is the time I have to go. I'm going to do my little route. And I get to the lodge at Crowley's Landing and I thought, oh, it's either like near or around high tide. It's really high. So I started doing my upstream paddle and I get up to the footbridge by Batstow, on the Mullica. And I'm realizing it was high downstream, but it is really low upstream. And it's been a long time since I paddled that far upstream and heading towards Constable's Bridge, where it was unbelievably shallow. Unbelievably shallow. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe how low it was upstream because of the flooding, because of how high it was downstream. So needless to say, when I came back down, I was going down against a still incoming tide, and it was seriously flooding. Like the picnic tables were underwater, like the land they weren't like so underwater you couldn't see them, but the footings, everything was totally swamped out at Crowley's Landing, and it was still coming in. And then I noticed as I'm leaving that it must be flooding quite frequently down there, because I noticed that the park guys have like their little road closure areas where that one low part. So, it was an interesting thing to see the results of, because we kind of in a quasi drought, I think, where the water was so low upstream, but yet so flooded downstream. So that was, kind of like a shock. And then also looking at the New York Times this morning, they have this, also I love the New York Times, they have this little like blurb of one of their articles and one of their recent projects. And they're looking at the impacts of sea level rise on forests far away from the coast. And they focused on New Jersey, Maryland, I think Virginia, North Carolina. And they're seeing impacts of forests far inland. And, there is a stand of trees on the Mullica too that I don't understand why it's dead. And it's, the first, when you're going above the footbridge, it's a bend to the right. It's the first little sort of beachy area that you're coming up to on the right, because you pass 3 beachy areas, and then there's a whole, anyway, I have that little river memorized sort of, and I could take you there. It's a stand of trees and it's dead, and there's no reason, I don't know why it's dead. It wasn't a fire, and it's been like that for a long time now. But anyway, so I'm really happy that you are taking climate change into consideration and starting to look more at that and how it impacts the Pinelands, because it really is. Other articles that struck my interest were how Germany is preparing for LNG export and stuff like that. And, back to the pipelines and stuff like that. We really need to cut our dependency on these fossil fuels, especially, and because ratepayers are paying for these pipelines that are going to be stranded assets, as well as, ratepayers are also taxpayers. And I know it's absolutely, in a way, it is central to what you guys do. You should think about the taxpayers, because it's their money that's also buying land to protect our aquifer and our pinelands. So that money can only go so far. And we are going to be really paying for the impacts of climate change. As we're seeing already, especially when you look at our counties and how they have to address suddenly washed out bridges and issues that never used to be issues before. Thanks.
Thank you, Margot. Is there anyone else that would like to comment? Ms. Gretsch?
Good morning, Commissioners. Ryan Greck
Morning,
with
Ryan.
Pinelands Preservation Alliance. Good morning. I asked if the Ocean County vote was moved to earlier in the agenda specifically to achieve a quorum. Why was the same not done for the South Jersey gas pipeline? Obviously, a quorum can happen if the will exists. So why is there a lack of will? You have to reasonably expect, as you've heard today, given that 8 months have passed since the Attorney General's decision, a declaration that the basis for the South Jersey gas pipeline was gone, and 5 months have passed since the appellate court remanded the issue back to the Pinelands Commission to reconsider your approval, you have to expect that members of the public grow suspicious of what the motivating factor is at play. You have the opportunity to restore the public trust that was fractured when the pipeline was approved in the first place, and do what the court has asked you to do, and do what the Attorney General has paved the way for you to do, and do what the public is begging you to do meeting after meeting and take another vote on this application, which is no longer being litigated. There's no lawsuit. Commissioner Ashman was on the phone just an hour ago, and she asked specifically if she was needed for additional votes, and she was told no. Why did no one in this commission say, yes, we can wrap up this South Jersey gas pipeline here and now? You missed the opportunity, and it is baffling to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Candy Ashman had a doctor's appointment. She couldn't stay on the phone. We didn't know it until this morning. She didn't mention it yesterday. We thought we had it locked. We worked really hard to try to get a quorum. When we're relying on Candy, we're struggling, but she had a doctor's appointment. She had to get off the phone.
She did ask.
But we knew she had to get off the phone.
I take responsibility for that because I said, no, I didn't put all those pieces together. So my apologies on that situation. Is there anyone else that would like to come up?
I'd just like to say, I don't think there's anything behind the scenes happening. I've been well informed on what's happening. And I just want to assure the public that there's nothing underhanded happening or deals being made.
Okay, I'd like to speak. Mr. Fishman, you're welcome to come up.
Arnold Fishman, Medford Lakes.
Welcome.
Thank you. We attended the last meeting thinking that the South Jersey gas abomination would finally be put to bed, and it wasn't put to bed, quote, for want of a quorum. It appears evident that the commission knows how to obtain a quorum when they want to accomplish something and not obtain a quorum when they don't want to accomplish something. I think the public is entitled to know why, after all this time, there's been no action on the remand from the appellate division. Can we get a report? I guess not. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come up and speak? Okay, we close the meeting to the general public comment. Do we have any reason at this point to go into closed session? Yeah, I hope that we can resolve this. I don't think we can resolve the issue of the South Jersey pipeline resolution or potential resolution today, but I think I hope we can do it at the next meeting. And I will do everything I can do to move this forward. I appreciate the public's concern as well as fellow commissioners and staff on this matter. Okay, this leads us to commission comments. Jerry?
Sure. Just in keeping with the theme about climate change, I just wanted to point out to everyone that the International Monetary Fund, an organization that's not known for its environmental activism, issued a report just a few weeks ago, and they were very blunt and candid in their language. The report was regarding the world economy in the age of climate change. That's not the precise title, but that was the theme of the report. And they actually used the phrase, and I'll do my best to quote it from memory, but they caution against catastrophic and irreversible damage to the planet, including the possibility of extinction of human life. The International Monetary Fund Now, if an organization that is focused on economic growth and the movement of money around the world can pause and pay that kind of attention to this crisis, then certainly we who are focused on the environment have an obligation to do so too. So just want to bring that to everyone's attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lavelle. Mr. Howe, anything? You're good? All right. Yes, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just like to indicate that in November, the Department of Agriculture, Rutgers Extension Service will be having a program at Duke's Farm for the purpose of farming for carbon, which I think will help educate the public and educate our farmers as to how we can recapture carbon through the winter months and through the year. The other comment would be, I would encourage that next month we make an extended effort at getting a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd just like to follow up on Mark and Jerry's comments. I was not aware of that report. I would like a copy, but if we can, I'd like to post it on our website under the Climate Change Committee.
Sure, Chairman.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I presume I can find it, but if you could furnish it all, that would be wonderful. And Jerry, thanks for letting us know about that meeting, because it sounds like agriculture is an important part of climate change and can contribute a lot to it. So thank you.
So, Mr. Lloyd, there's a possibility, I think, that maybe at the November meeting for the commission that we could have the speaker. Do you know?
When I contacted him, I asked him to reserve November 8th, but Nancy, we may not have time on the agenda, so we're working on.
Like that, you can make that day, or two speakers can make that day. So see what the agenda looks like.
Go ahead.
I'll connect him with you because we've talked about that, and I'll also ask him if he's got those 2 days to reserve the next two P&Is to see if he can do that.
So the P&I meeting is October 25th. Is that right? Yes, and so well, we did do that in the past. We did meet at Batsto in the past. Well, then I would like to thank staff and the executive director for the efforts at putting together World Water Day. It's been 12 years or longer, and it's 13. It's a spectacular event for kids, for school groups, and our staff does a great job in conjunction with the DEP. I don't know whether there's some other nonprofit groups there or not at this point, but it's very educational. As a retired outdoor education teacher, I can attest that it's top quality, the education the kids get at that event every year. So I'm just wondering if Mayor Pikolowski has gotten his school groups together so they can attend that meeting. We talked about that at the last commission meeting. Okay. Right. I mean, I know we have the brochure that was requested at the last meeting, and thanks staff for doing that. Would it be possible, Nancy, for staff to just give a summary of World Water Day? Joel or Paul? Now.
If you'll pardon me, Chairman.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's do it afterwards because we need to adjourn the meeting. I'm sorry. Okay, so they're my comments. Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, so we need to have a motion to adjourn.
We adjourn.
And is there a second? Sean? All in favor? Aye.
Sorry.